Okay, let's go live with another Hot Zone episode. Today it's titled the Asian Apocalypse. I don't know if it's exactly an apocalypse, but it just rhymed. I mean, it just sort of flowed for a good title. So we called it Asian Apocalypse. But we're going to talk about what's going on between Thailand and Cambodia today. And if we get a chance, we'll also talk about some developments in Ukraine, because there's some crazy stuff going on there, and that I'd really rather not talk about, because I'm just so tired of it. I mean, I'm just so disgusted with what's going on, what the Trump administration is doing with our allies in Europe and with Ukraine. But it is what it is. So we got to talk about it if we get that far. But actually, the story of what's going on in Thailand and Cambodia is not that long. It shouldn't take that long to go through, but there's some history there, and we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about some sort of behind the scenes stuff that may be coming into play. And so stick around. Now, first, do me a favor and post where you're coming in from in the chat. I appreciate that. If you can't post in the chat yet, it's because you haven't been a subscriber for more than 60 seconds. But I love to see where people are coming in from. We got somebody from Somalia, Minnesota. I've been there. I've been to the Somalia, Minnesota, and from Jackson, Kentucky, and a bunch of places around the country and around the globe. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how my travel schedule ought to sort of shape up after the first of the year. Before I do that, though, I don't know if you saw this, but let's see if I just actually made a image of it, a screenshot of it. I've been watching the price of silver, and it's just going through the roof. It's hit a new all-time high yesterday. It's now over $60 an ounce. And I've been stacking silver for a long, long time. And a lot of people, you hear me talk about preserved gold, but preserved gold also sells physical silver, as well as platinum and palladium and all sorts of stuff. And preserved gold will help you put gold and silver into your portfolio. I've got these here. We'll remove that for a second. This is a Walking Liberty 1 ounce coin, and I bought this for about $15 several years ago, and now it's worth $60. And so these things are great store of value. There's a good argument to be made that because of some external forces that have been holding down the price of silver for the last 5-10 years that are changing, the price of silver may be in for an even bigger run than gold is. And so if you're interested in putting some gold or silver into your retirement account, you see there the little IRA sticker on each of those coins that Preserve Gold sells. That means that they can put those into your IRA in physical form by putting them into a vault somewhere with your name on it. And that's the safest way to own gold or silver, is to actually have the physical metal and not paper derivatives or something like that. So if you'd like to find out more, you just text the word Chuck on your phone to 50505, and they will send you a free wealth protection guide. They will talk to you on the phone if you give them a call. They'll explain everything to you, run through the whole gamut of your options. And I think you'll find that they are very forthright, very straightforward, very honest people. I trust them, and you should too. So thank you to Preserve Gold for sponsoring today's podcast. Now, there's a lot of fakery going around on the internet, and I want to show you some of that first, because as you look through social media, you're going to be seeing videos coming out from this war in Cambodia and Thailand. I'm already losing my voice. And I want to point out a couple of videos here and sort of single them out because you're going to see stuff like this and you need to be able to discern what you're looking at. Take a look. Wow, that looks like quite a strike there. Yeah, and here's another one. You can literally see the bombs falling away from the airplanes and impacting on the side of the hill. Well, I'm going to play that again with the sound off. Let's see here. What I want to point out is that both of these videos are AI generated. They're not real, and they look very realistic. But there are some cues that help me understand that they're not real. For example, planes typically don't drop bombs that way anymore. They fire missiles. But so this explosion is ridiculous. That is very unlikely explosion there. So just buyer beware is what I'm saying. It's important to understand that there are entities out there that are trying to shape your opinion about anything that's going on in the world today. And you need to be on guard against that. One of the ways you can do that is by coming and watching this podcast, and I will walk you through it and help you understand what's fake and what's not. Those two videos were fake. Now let's look at some real videos of the conflict and what's going on here. Now, I'm going to turn the sound down a little bit on this, but these are some tanks heading toward the border. I believe this is the Thai side. It's in Thailand. Obviously when they start bringing tanks into the mix, things are getting pretty serious. You've also got troops here who are moving into place and taking over villages now inside of Cambodia. This is a Thai APC running over the welcome sign for a Cambodian village as they enter the village here. Now, the Minister of Defense for Thailand said, he put out a statement and said, Cambodia launched a military attack after the Ministry of Foreign Affairs presented clear evidence of Cambodia's violations of the use of anti-personnel landmines. Cambodia took advantage of Thailand's crisis situation caused by severe flooding in the south and used heavy weaponry to attack Thai forces in a manner that endangered the lives of military personnel, civilians, and Thailand's sovereignty. Cambodia's actions clearly demonstrate a lack of sincerity in jointly maintaining peace. Therefore, Thailand is compelled to fully exercise its right of self-defense under international law. Let's turn the music off on that. To protect Thai territory and the lives of Thai soldiers and Thai citizens. The deputy prime minister was even more aggressive. He said, no more negotiations. If Cambodia wants the fighting to stop, it will need to comply with our demands. This is as much a message to Donald Trump as it is to Cambodia, because Donald Trump brokered the first sort of cessation of hostilities back in the end of July. Now President Trump is saying that he'll take care of this. That's no big deal. He'll call them and they'll stop fighting. Well, the deputy prime minister of Thailand is saying, no, we're not going to stop fighting. We're done negotiating. The foreign minister of Thailand also said, we don't think tariffs should be used to pressure Thailand to get back to joint declaration. That's the peace declaration, to get back to a dialogue process. We're not ready for dialogue with Cambodia or to accept any third-party mediation. They're basically telling President Trump to get lost. You can see here more combat footage as they're shooting each other across the line of contact there. For their part, Cambodia's former prime minister and Senate president came out and said, Cambodia wants peace, but Cambodia is forced to fight back to defend its territory. We'll talk more about that in a minute. The culture minister said, they called it a reprehensible act reflecting profound immorality. That's a very communist way to phrase something. Another spokesperson said Cambodia has strictly respected the ceasefire and exercised utmost restraint amid the Thai violations. The ambassador, H.E. Dara, said Cambodia welcomes calls to uphold the ceasefire, but peace requires action beyond words. And the general government said immediately cease all hostilities, withdraw its forces to, they're calling on Thailand to withdraw its forces to its side of the border and refrain from any further show of courage, whatever that means. So you can see here, there's quite a bit of combat footage that's floating around out on the internet. Let's talk a little bit about the history of what's going on. Now, if you have questions, folks, just put them in the chat. It helps to put them in all caps, make it easier for Nathan to find them, and he'll star all those things, and I'll get to those and answer them shortly. Okay. When it comes to talking about the history of this conflict, I'm going to make this smaller. This, of course, Thailand and Cambodia have been fighting over this territory since long before it was even called Thailand, back when it was called Siam. And so the border dispute is ongoing for a long time, centuries. Back after World War II, the French drew border lines between Cambodia and Thailand, and they're kind of responsible for what we're seeing right now. It is, let me see here. Oh, that's where that went. Okay. One of my pages of notes disappeared. The easiest way to explain this is, France drew lines on a map to demarcate the border between Cambodia and Thailand without much knowledge or understanding or even care about the people who live there, and not a lot of input from those people either. What that means is, and this is something we've seen all across the globe, of course, all across the Middle East. Many of the conflicts that we see today are due to lines that were drawn on a map by somebody who wasn't even in the Middle East and didn't take into account the feelings of the people, the traditions, the traditional rivalries, anything like that. They just said, oh, here's a ridge line, let's make that the border, or here's a river, let's make that the border. And that causes no end of problems. The United States did that between the Burmese and the Burma Hill tribes people, and that's why there's still a civil war going on in Burma to this day. Now, the area that they're fighting over is a very sparsely populated area, but there are still over 100,000 people who have been displaced by the fighting. They're getting text messages from their respective governments telling them that they better evacuate because the area they're in is now a military front. The front line along the border is more than 100 miles. It's about 200 kilometers long. Let's see if we can pull up a map here and take a look at that. Let's see, where's my map? Do you see the map, Nate? Oh, there it is. Okay. So this picture is an image of the area that they're fighting over. This is near a temple that's called the Priya Ver Temple, and I'm sure I didn't say that right, but it's an ancient temple that's been, sitting on this cliff top for centuries, and it's been the subject of sort of nationalistic fervor on both sides of the border for many years. Now, this, just to show you where the fighting is taking place, it's basically all along the border between Cambodia and Thailand, all down here in the south. Now, there are incidents that have taken place as far as I can see, over here in a place called Bone Tracoon, which is a village on the border, on the Cambodian side of the border. And then this place called Osmach. Man, they really know how to name things over there. Osmach is, looks like a little bit bigger town, village, something like that. And we're learning something from this conflict that I didn't understand before. I didn't know before. I'm actually planning a trip to Thailand to cover. Let's get rid of that, and we'll make this smaller. Planning a trip to Thailand to visit a scam center that was taken over right along the border. It's actually on the Burma side, inside Myanmar. But this thing was taken over by Karen forces in the area from the militias and the Burma army that was controlling it before. And so they took over this scam center. I'm going to be doing a whole video about it. And they actually liberated hundreds of people who were being essentially held as slaves in there. And that was up on the Thai border up here with Myanmar, way up here, okay, on the northern border. So that's a story that I've been following for some time. And I knew that there were scam centers run by China inside Myanmar, inside Burma. But what I didn't know until recently is there are also scam centers inside Cambodia up here along this border, because again, this is very sparsely populated area. Actually, if you go to a satellite map, you can see that there's not a lot of villages or anything, even roads on the Thai side. There's just not much at all out there. There are people that live in those areas, but it's very sparsely populated. So now what do I mean by scam centers? Well, the Chinese typically are the ones who run these things. What they do is they build a facility, they put a fat pipe into it with very good internet, and then they start recruiting people. Recruiting is the best way I can phrase that, the nicest way I can phrase it. Sometimes kidnapping them, sometimes coercing them, sometimes blackmailing them, and sometimes just plain old scamming people into coming to these places. And what they'll do is they'll meet them in Thailand and they'll say that, you know, I'm a job recruiter, I'm a headhunter, I've got a great office job for you. If you're interested, then, you know, come with me. And they say, yeah. So they get in their car and they drive for hours and hours. And the next thing they know, they're being carried across the border into Burma. Their passports are taken away. They're locked up in a compound and they are forced to make phone calls and scam people out of money. If you've heard me talking about the romance scams, which I talk about from time to time because I've been a victim of a romance scam, in that these romance scammers steal my photograph and make fake profiles on Facebook and Twitter and every place, and then befriend people pretending to be me, or maybe not using my name, but just using my photo and some other name. And then once they befriend, usually it's lonely women, they say, oh, I'm a engineer working on a base in Syria, so I don't have good internet, so I can't do a video call with you, but I love you. I want to marry you. I'm widowed and I have a daughter that's back in the States. And man, my boss won't give me a leave to go home and visit my daughter unless I pay him, and I just don't have the money with me, but I've got it at home. So if you just send me the money, do me a favor, I'll come visit you and we'll live happy ever after, et cetera, that sort of thing. The ones that are stealing my photographs, for the most part, have been from Nigeria. But these scam centers in Burma and in Cambodia do the same thing. And there's lots of other types of scams that they do, investment scams, crypto scams, you name it. And they are given quotas, like you have to scam people out of so much money every day. And if you don't get fed today, or you get to sleep in solitary confinement in a cell, or you get beaten, or things like that. And so these scam centers are a scourge on the globe. There's no other way to put it. The reason I bring that up is because since this conflict flared back up 2 days ago, we've seen a bunch of Thai troops striking scam centers in Cambodia. I didn't know there were scam centers in Cambodia. I'm not surprised, but apparently there are. And there are people that are fleeing those scam centers because they're being bombed by Thailand. Now, the scam center in and of itself wouldn't represent a military target, if you ask me. However, maybe Thailand is taking a page out of President Trump's playbook and saying what these people are doing is damaging, it's hurtful, it's immoral, it's unjust, it's criminal, and so we're going to take them out. I don't know. It could just be that they're accidentally striking these things. We haven't heard anything from the Thai government about why they're doing this or not. Now, at the beginning of this conflict, this time, 2 days ago, Cambodia at first said, we didn't do anything. The Thai just started shooting at us and we don't know what's going on. And we're not even retaliating. Well, then videos came out of Cambodia shooting rockets, Grad rockets at Thailand. And Thailand, for its part, says the reason that they kicked this one off 2 days ago is that the Cambodians have been laying anti-personnel landmines all up along the border, and one of their Thai soldiers was injured or killed either by small arms fire or by stepping on a landmine, something like that. So it is kind of a tit for tat here. Both sides are blaming the other. There have been about a dozen people killed so far in this particular flare up. There were more than 20 killed in the last time when this happened back in July. But it looks like this is going to go on for some time now. It appears that Thailand is like, we're done playing. And they're sending tanks. They're taking drones across the border. They have drones that are sort of knockoffs of the Shahed drone that Russia is using against Ukraine. And there have been some videos of some of those drones going across the border into Cambodia and striking at Cambodian troops. Again, a bunch of people going to shelters. As a matter of fact, it sounds like neither government really expected that ceasefire to hold for very long, because the shelters that they set up back in July that people were living in when they got displaced, they never even took them apart. They're tent cities in soccer fields and stadiums and stuff like that. And both sides just left them standing because they figured they're probably going to need them again before too long. And that turned out to be the case. So now, who's the good guy and who's the bad guy? That's my question whenever I approach any of these things. You've heard me say that our first question when it comes to any crisis or conflict should be, which side has the moral high ground? You know, we want to look at things morally first before we look at them politically or economically or geopolitically. So the answer to that question in this case is kind of hard to discern. Thank you, PC. I appreciate that. Like I said, they're fighting over ancient temples. And there was a case, this one goes all the way back to 1962, where Cambodia brought this border dispute before the International Court of Justice and asked them to rule on who actually owns this particular temple, the one that I showed you Here's a picture of it. And the ICC said that Cambodia owns that temple. However, they did not rule on all of the disputed territory around that temple, just the temple itself. And so that kind of set the stage for further conflict. They did that again in like 2011 or 2013, something like that, went back to the ICJ and had that reiterated again. So the International Court believes that this temple at least belongs to Cambodia, and it's right there on the border. Thailand really was okay to let that sit for the most part. They didn't have much of a problem with it, but there are some nationalist elements inside Thailand who are, and this gets into like Thai local politics, which obviously I'm not going to be an expert at, but just from the reading and research I've done, it looks like there's there are parties in the Thai government that are using this issue to get votes, and they're making it a bigger issue than it has been in the past. And they're saying the current administration in Thailand has given away sovereign Thailand by not taking over this ground and everything. So the political pressure has mounted on the current government to do something about it. And the thing that kicked this off, as I said, was like a Thai soldier getting injured by a mine or something. But I mean, you can't, from a moral standpoint, I just go like, it's an ancient temple. Why not just create a duty-free zone, like just a free zone between the two countries that encompasses this temple, and say everybody can visit this temple, and the actual border is going to be on either side of this, Thailand over here and Cambodia over here. Why not just do something like that? Why do we have to go to killing people? I don't really understand, especially when we're not talking about Thailand wanting to take over Cambodia or Cambodia wanting to take over Thailand. We're just talking about ancient ruins and ancient sort of anger, fostering this current crisis. And it's very unfortunate to see. Now, having said that, you could make, some people are making a case that this is more of a proxy battle between the United States and China, because Cambodia is China's closest ally in Asia. Cambodia is a fairly communist country. I've been to Cambodia recently, and yeah, it's a little oppressive. I enjoyed my time there, but I mean, it certainly is no free and open democracy. So China has officially said, look, we're staying out of this. This doesn't have anything to do with us. We're just asking for all parties to stop fighting and, do the right thing. That's what you would hope they would say. However, what they're doing behind the scenes might not line up with those statements. And Cambodia definitely is more a friend to China. Thailand is definitely more a friend to the United States. Thailand has a much larger army, almost 5 times bigger than Cambodia's army. So Thailand will win any conventional armed conflict between the two countries. That's kind of a foregone conclusion. But, you can win and still lose. That's called a Pyrrhic victory. And in Asia especially, but we're finding in lots of places like Afghanistan and in Ukraine, it's not always the strongest military that is going to prevail, because all you have to do is have a sufficiently motivated insurgency and a conventional army just really can't do much against that. These are problems, again, especially these problems that go back hundreds or thousands of years, that you just can't kill your way out of. It's just not possible to do. So that kind of tells me that they're going to have to come to some sort of negotiated solution to this, and they probably will. These sorts of conflicts, I would call them like brush fire wars, typically don't, go really big, full-scale war between the two countries. Let's hope that doesn't happen between Cambodia and Thailand. A lot of people would die. If we look back at the map, one of the things that I found kind of interesting was here. Where's my map? There it is. If we look how close Bangkok is, the capital of Thailand, to the border, and look how close Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, is to the border. They're both pretty far away. It's actually about I'd say a 6-hour drive from Bangkok to where the fighting is over here. I think if I'm not mistaken, it's probably about a 6-hour drive. It's probably a 15-hour drive, knowing the state of Cambodian roads, from Phnom Penh up to the border area as well. So these are remote areas of these countries that have been fought over for a long time, and they're probably not going to fix this problem overnight. But President Trump says he's going to do his best to, kind of reestablish peace in the region. We'll see how that goes. Now, you can live on $2K a month. John Babcock says, I just noticed this comment. You can live on $2K a month in both those countries. Their income is like $200 a month. That's true. Both Thailand and Cambodia are very cheap. Cambodia is cheaper. Very, very cheap places. There's a lot of digital nomads that go to Thailand because Thailand is actually a really nice country. If I had to choose one country to take my wife to on vacation, if she could never travel outside the United States ever again, I would take her to Armenia, actually. But my second choice would be Thailand. I think Thailand is one of the best countries I've ever been to as a tourist. I mean, if you were just going as a tourist, Thailand's a great place to go. It's really interesting. It's super safe. The people are about as friendly as you could ever find people. I mean, I don't think there are a lot of people on planet Earth that are friendlier than the Thais. A super polite society. And again, very inexpensive, lots of interesting stuff to see, etc. Now, I say the same about Armenia as well, and that's why we do tours to Armenia, because everybody knows about Thailand, but nobody knows about Armenia, and more people should. And Armenia is cool in a different way. They've got a lot of biblical history that I enjoy, Christian history there. It's kind of a Christian part of the Holy Land, since it was the first Christian nation. And of course, in Thailand, you have a lot of Buddhism, a lot of animism that you run into, which is a little disconcerting for a Christian, honestly. That's the only negative thing I could say about being a tourist in Thailand is I get kind of skeeved out by all of these pagan deities, pagan temples and structures, and there's just a darkness that surrounds those things. And then there is also the human trafficking issue, which I've done documentaries about. And maybe what we'll do is we'll go over to chuckholton.com today and post my human trafficking documentary from Thailand that we made several years ago. So if you go over to chuckholton.com and become a supporter, you can get lots of extra content like that. I've got 65 documentaries. I've got a dozen books, and so all kinds of extra stuff that you can get by being a supporter over at chuckholton.com. We've had a couple people in the last few days that have made just one-time gifts. You don't have to actually sign up for a monthly thing. There are people that say, we just want to support you, and have made some sizable monthly gifts. I'm sorry, one-time gifts that I need to contact you guys and just say thank you, because that's huge. We did start a nonprofit, and so starting next year, we're going to be kind of shifting any donations people want to give over to the nonprofit, and that'll let you write it off your taxes as well. I'm going to be talking a lot more about that in the couple of weeks before the first of the year, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, I made a documentary about human trafficking in Thailand. It is a huge problem. It's not Thailand's fault necessarily, but it's just that because of their pagan / animistic leanings there, the majority of people, things like sex work are not, it's not a taboo like it is in other parts of the world. It's just like a job that you could do. So you could be a dental hygienist, or you can be a prostitute, like take your pick. And parents will even encourage their young daughters, like, hey, why don't you go get out on the street and make some money? Because, we're hungry. We need some money. And there's more to it than that. There are organized crime syndicates that are kidnapping women out of Burma and taking them against their will to brothels inside Thailand. The Thai government, for its part, has made efforts to crack down on that. It is illegal. Underage, sex work is illegal in Thailand. But you see, it's even worse in Cambodia. So, yeah, I don't know how I got off on that subject. But anyway, if you want to see the documentary, go to chuckholton.com. I'll try to get Rubina to go post it today sometime over there, and you can go watch it. Now, we're at 37 minutes, so I want to get to the questions. I see some questions over here. And the first comes from Cheryl. God bless you, Chuck, and at this organization and chat. I hope it helps in some small way. Thank you very much for that. It's very kind. I really appreciate, especially the grassroots donations and just like, I guess you'd call that a tip. Maybe I won't even have to pay taxes on that tip next year, because President Trump is getting rid of the tip on taxes. So thank you for those. It's very encouraging to me. Obviously, I get a lot of hate mail from trolls on the internet, and you guys really make me feel special when you do things like that. So I need all God's blessing I can get. The Trumpster cannot really say he stopped the war, can he? I said that yesterday. President Trump claims to have ended 8 wars. And if you actually look at the list of 8 wars, I think they're pretty much all disputable. And I don't know if he gets dinged. Does he lose a point if he starts a war with Venezuela? I don't know. Or with Mexico, because now he's threatening Mexico and Nicaragua. There was another country he was Colombia. He was threatening Colombia and Mexico today and saying, hey, maybe when we're done with Venezuela, we'll move on to Colombia and Mexico. We'll have to wait and see. Trump says a lot of things, and he has made it undeniably clear this time around that just because he says something doesn't mean it's true. That's unfortunate. I really would hope to have more honest leadership, but it is what it is. Okay, so next question from Nathan says, the EU messes with our sovereignty, and as soon as Trump supports nationalism in Europe, they want to have a war with us. No, the EU doesn't want to have a war with us at all. There's a dust up right now between the EU and the United States leadership. If you actually look at the polls, Americans overwhelmingly support NATO, overwhelmingly support Ukraine, and want President Trump to try to end the war in Ukraine in a just manner by helping Ukraine win. There's more than 70% of Americans polled said that they supported that. And I think most Americans are smart enough to see the very real difference between life in a country like Russia and life in a country in the western part of Europe. Now, everybody, I think, in the United States kind of has issues with the rampant socialism, the creeping socialism that's all over Europe. When I go to Europe, and I go to England, for example, and you talk to normal people there, they like to sort of criticize the United States because we don't have nationalized health care. And I'll say, well, I'm sorry, but no offense, but looking at your teeth, it doesn't actually look like your healthcare is all that great, at least not your dental care. Or how long would you have to wait to get a routine surgery that I can go pay money for and get right now, today or tomorrow in the United States? There are good and bad things about either system. My biggest criticism of a nationalized healthcare system is that when you nationalize healthcare, you bring the government into your life in a way that makes it, gives it the power, or at least a reason, to interfere with your life and to be able to tell you everything about how you can live your life. Whether or not you can go certain places, whether or not you can do certain activities, whether or not you can have a rope swing at your house, whether or not your children can play outside. I mean, just there are some very egregious examples that I've seen, especially in the UK, of the, what do they call that? The health and welfare ministry or whatever, interfering in people's lives in ways that would make any American just livid. And I personally would rather have a very broken capitalistic healthcare system that gives me the freedom to live my life the way I want to, than to have a nationalized healthcare system where they can tell me, where I can go and what I can do. So a lot of Americans have have problems with certain things about Europe. The globalization, we don't like globalists in America. And so, yeah, that's a problem. Is that a reason for us to be enemies of Europe? No, that's stupid. That would be the dumbest thing ever. Europe is a liberal democracy. The people that live in Europe are, directing their own political lives because they can vote. That doesn't work so well in Russia. So if we had to choose one or the other, even though there are things about Europe that all of us disagree with, I'm going with Europe. And unfortunately, the rhetoric coming out of parts of the Trump administration, President Trump, for his part, said, no, I like Europe. I don't have a problem with Europe. We have, some issues with their policies, but by and large, I get along with all of the European leaders. But there are elements of the Trump administration who have been very caustic towards Europe, to the point, part of it is Trump saying he's going to take over Greenland, that the Netherlands has now released a security report, and for the first time ever, put the United States in the column with North Korea, Russia, Iran, and China. They have moved the United States and said, no, the United States is now aligning more with these bad countries that are a threat to Europe and less with the Western countries that are allies of Europe. Of course, there are a lot of calls right now, even from sitting U.S. congressmen, like Congressman Massey from Kentucky, saying that we need to pull out of NATO completely. I think that would be a big mistake. NATO is a defensive organization, and it's a standards organization more than anything. What that does is, if you pull out of NATO, what you're doing is you're basically killing maybe a couple 100,000 American jobs, maybe more, because one of the reasons that we're in NATO is so that we can sell American weaponry to NATO countries. So we get everybody to kind of use the same weapons and equipment, and a lot of that gets made in the United States. That technology comes from the US. And so if we pull out of NATO, NATO stops buying weapons from the United States and airplanes and tanks and all sorts of stuff. And that is going to cost a lot of American jobs. Now, NATO has over, I think, $3 trillion in U.S. assets, mostly bonds. So they're holding a lot of our debt. And they have said, look, if Trump continues on this tack of, cozying up to Russia and thumbing his nose at Europe, we're just going to dump all of our treasuries. That would put the United States economy into a tailspin, the likes of which we haven't seen since 2008. Would be a really bad thing. Now, I don't think that they would actually do it, but they're just reminding us that, hey, you guys have a credit card with a really high balance on it, and we're part of those that make up the bank that you're borrowing from. And we don't have to, we can call those loans due. Now, Margie says, how does China relate to this Cambodia-Thailand conflict, if at all? Well, this is where the scam centers come in, because, as I said, China has taken a neutral stance on the conflict itself. However, China is the one building these, by and large, these scam centers in Cambodia and casinos and things like that. So they're obviously not going to like it if those things get blown up, and they're going to be losing a lot of revenue that way. Personally, I think that should be definitely on the target list. I think the U.S. ought to be bombing those scam centers wherever they exist, because they are literally stealing billions. The amount of money that's being stolen every year around the world from these scams is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. It's very expensive, and we all pay for that in lots of little insidious ways. So I'm with Ryan Macbeth when he says we ought to be dropping warheads on foreheads, and it should be considered an act of war if you've got a scam center set up and you're scamming American citizens. That's just my opinion, but other people hold that as well. Okay, next question. Do you think this is the likelihood this will get into central Cambodia? Concern for people we know. As it stands right now, I don't think so. I really, Cambodia is a big enough country. I don't think that Thailand is going to be bombing stuff in central Cambodia. If it gets bad enough that they start bombing Phnom Penh, then there might be a problem. But so far, they're just bombing things on the border in that disputed area. So I think that there will be a negotiated settlement before it gets to that state. Next question from Klamath River Media. Any update on Russian airstrikes on Ukraine, Ukraine's counterattacks on Russia? I was doing some math, just doing some research this morning. Russia has been firing something like 7,000 rockets and missiles a month at Ukraine. Almost all of them are aimed at civilian areas. With that in mind, you might think that Ukraine would be a smoking ruin. However, Ukraine is still right now able to shoot down about 90% of the drones and about 40% of the missiles. So the missiles are causing more damage than the drones are. They carry a bigger payload, and they're, more of them getting through. That said, Russia is heavily targeting civilian infrastructure, power grid, things like that. The Ukrainians are now down to about a third of their normal power grid, their normal power capacity. When I was in Ukraine a couple weeks ago, what I found is that almost everybody at this point has a generator. So it's not like they are just completely without power. There are poor areas, villages and stuff out in the countryside that, they just go without, but those people are used to going without anyway. They're living a very meager existence. But people in the developed areas of Ukraine typically when the power goes out, they just go fire up their generator. When the power comes back on, they plug everything in, they charge everything up, and then they work on battery since then. They've had 4 years of this now. And so it's not affecting the country near as much as you might think. The Ukrainian people are extremely resilient. As an example of that, in Kharkiv, which is very close to the Russian border, and it's one of the most heavily bombed cities in all of Ukraine, major cities that's not already taken over by Russia. And their power grid has been just obliterated. It's amazing how much ordnance the Russians have poured into destroying the power grid in Kharkiv. But I saw pictures today from Kharkiv of Christmas lights on in the central square. A Christmas tree was decorated and the lights are up, and they're Christmas, those shapes, and they have animals and Santa and stuff like that all lit up in the downtown square. Somebody hooked up a generator, strung up a whole bunch of lights, and said, you know what, as a big middle finger to Russia, we're going to have our Christmas celebration down here anyway. And that just shows you how resilient the people in Ukraine are. And that's why I have often said, I don't see how Ukraine could lose unless they are forced to lose from politicians on the outside. And that looks like that's what the Trump administration is trying to do. It's trying to make them lose. The next question from One Tired Mama is, are you asking somebody else? Somebody asks, does Thailand have Israeli weapons? No, they have American weapons, F-16s. They have some other weapons too, like a Gryphon fighters and things like that. But for the most part, they get their weapons from the United States. The U.S. and Thailand do joint military training all the time, every year. There are major training exercises that go on in Thailand that the United States participates in. So they are a close ally. We have treaties with Thailand. And really, if, let's say, hypothetically, China jumped in on the side of Cambodia and attacked Thailand, and it looked like Thailand was really in trouble, the United States actually has treaties that we would likely come to their defense. I say likely because President Trump, but treaties being what they are. Now, Martha says, is our country headed back to Vietnam days? I don't think so. The people in the United States don't have the stomach for that kind of a war or those kind of losses. We lost 58,000 men in Vietnam. And in 20 years of fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, we lost less than 10,000 men. So the American people, and that was too much for the American people. We got so tired of that. So no, I don't think we're headed back to Vietnam. Okay, Klamath River Media says, is the Burmese-Myanmar civil war relevant to this conflict, or is that an isolated event to Cambodia and Thailand? Good question, but no, that's a completely separate thing. Now, the Burma civil war has been going on for more than 70 years, and it does come down to external forces making rules in places that they don't know anything about. The United States during World War II was assisted by the Hill Tribes people in Burma very heavily against the Japanese. And so we promised those Hill Tribes, hey, if you help us, we'll let you have your own country when this is all over. And then when the war ended, we said, okay, here's your country. And we just kind of left it to the Burmese, Hill Tribes people. Oh, they're all just a bunch of little brown people. And we just left it to everybody. Well, the Burmese and the Hill Tribe people, the Burmese are Buddhist by and large. The Hill Tribe people are Christian by and large. And so that kind of throwing them all into one pot together, some fish just don't swim well in the same fish tank. And they started a civil war that's literally been going on for more than 70 years now. It's the longest running civil war on planet Earth today. The Burmese side of that war is supported by China. And the other side is not supported by anybody. the Karen, the Karenni, the Shan, but they are banding together. And since the crackdown, several years ago now, that the Burmese government did on the Burmese people, when they had kind of a color revolution, so to speak, and the Burmese military junta just brutally repressed its own people, a whole bunch of Burmese people have joined the resistance now and are fighting on the side of the hill tribes. And that's why the hill tribes are essentially winning. Up until just recently, they've been taking ground away from the Burma army. I just talked to Dave Eubank the other day, and he's in Burma. And he's like, yeah, the Chinese started making threats against some of the northern hill tribes, the northern tribes, and told them to, hey, knock it off, because they don't want to see the Burma army lose all of their territory. They're supporting them with jets, fighter jets. The Russians are also supporting the Burma army. So it's a really bad situation there. And I may go back there next year. I've been invited. So I don't know. The last time I went, you guys just didn't care. You just, nobody watched. So I was not sure I want to go back there for another couple of weeks if the numbers here on the YouTube channel are going to fall off a cliff, because nobody cares about Burma. But there are probably 10,000 Christians a year that are being killed in Burma. So it is a big deal, and something that we ought to keep our eyes on for sure. All right, next question. Guest and comment from what I hear, Christianity is growing rapidly in Taiwan, the gospel being spread. Can we pray for our brothers and sisters in Christ over there? Any persecution happening to them? In Taiwan, I don't believe there is any persecution of the Christian faith right now. Of course, if China takes over Taiwan, there will be severe persecution of the Christians there. But Taiwan is a very modern country, very progressive country, and Christianity, as far as I know, is free there without a doubt. So I don't think there's any persecution.
Cheryl also had a correction for that question.
Okay, is that next? Oh, I typed Thailand, but the phone autocorrected to Taiwan. Oh, okay, all right. There are Christian churches in Taiwan. There are Christian churches in Cambodia. I've been to both. And so I don't know to what extent they are persecuted. I think in Cambodia, it's more likely that you, as a Christian, you would face persecution than in Thailand. But you just have to understand that if you're living in a place where the Christianity is a very distinct minority, I mean, a very, very, very small minority, then it's going to be a little more difficult to be a Christian there than it would be in a place where Christians are the majority. Sorry about that. I missed that correction. Chuck, could China be supporting Cambodia? China wants Taiwan. Well, I've already answered that question a couple times, so we'll just move on. Go to the next question. I wonder what level of support the U.S. would offer to Thailand if the conflict at both sides can't reach a peace agreement in time. I think I answered that question just now too, so we'll move on. Question: how do you see all of today's world events lining up with Bible prophecy, and what's your view of eschatology? I hesitate to talk about that subject because that's a very arcane subject, especially biblical prophecy. I've read plenty in biblical prophecy. I have studied it, read the Bible every day, but the best I can say is two things. We're one day closer to what happens in Revelation today than we were yesterday. And number two, I think our focus should be on the book of Jude and not the book of Revelation. The book of Jude tells you to be yanking people out of the fire until he comes. And so that's what I want to focus myself on, is yanking people out of the fire. If you're asking whether I'm a pre-trib, post-trib, all that kind of stuff, I don't think this is the venue to be talking about to get into the weeds on all that kind of stuff, because we'll lose a lot of people who are just like have no idea what we're talking about. And I think biblically, those are conversations that are best done person to person, because the Bible clearly says in 2 Timothy that we shouldn't be involved in foolish and stupid arguments, because it only hurts the people who listen. And that just specifically talking about genealogies and those kinds of biblical things that Christians tend to like to argue over at Christmas or whatever. So thank you for the question, but that's as far as I'm gonna go on that. Cheryl says, do you think this is a spiritual war above and beyond a political war? Well, I think everything in the world today is a spiritual battle. There are definitely spiritual forces at play. The devil would love to see everybody at each other's throats. The devil rejoices when people start killing each other. And I think we need to be peacemakers as much as possible, and understand. I mean, the Bible very clearly says, we're not fighting against principalities and powers. We're fighting against. We're not fighting against forces in this world. We're fighting against principalities and powers, meaning heavenly forces, fighting against demonic forces. And that plays into pretty much everything on planet Earth today. This is what I was talking about. When I go to a place like Cambodia or Thailand, and you go to a temple or something like that, it's a pagan temple, you can feel that spiritual conflict. And I don't like it. I mean, it's dark. So I don't really like visiting those places very much. Some of them are very, very beautiful, very ornate, and they're kind of like cathedrals in Western Europe. They're just tourist attractions now. Nobody really goes there to worship or anything, but still, it just skeeves me out. I don't really like it. Chuck, would you be able to do a live on what's happening at the Mexican border and the cartel update? Many thanks for all you're doing. Yes, I am keeping notes on that and putting it when I feel like I've got enough put together to make it worth doing an hour live on. I'll certainly do a live on that. One Tired Mama says, Oscar Blue Ramirez, he posts from Mexico. Oh yeah, my friend Oscar is doing lives. If you really want to keep up on what's going on in Mexico, Oscar is the guy to listen to, and he puts his life on the line every day, because being a journalist in Mexico is one of the most dangerous jobs you can do. So definitely go follow Oscar over there and support him. Hopefully we'll get him over to Armenia on our next trip, or maybe here to Panama for our tour that's coming up here in Panama. As a matter of fact, on that note, let me just remind you that we have this tour going in Panama. Where did I put that? There it is. Okay, there it is. Put it up on the stage. April 9th to the 14th. We still got a few slots left for hot zonians who want to come travel with Chuck Holton to the place where I live. Come meet my monkeys, and we'll go hiking a little, and we'll do some spa days, and it's going to be really laid back. You don't have to be in great shape or anything. It's not going to be a safety third tour like some of our other tours have been. It's just going to be a really relaxing time. We're going to get to see the history of Panama, go see the Panama Canal and that sort of thing, have some really good food and some good fellowship together. So if you'd like to join us, that's coming up April 9th to the 14th. All you have to do is go to that link on the screen, holtonnews.com/Panama-tour, and you can get the information, or just send an email to info@holtonnews.com. We'll send you more information about that. Okay, next question. Is it safe to get off a cruise ship in resort areas of Mexico like Ensenada? Is your opinion with these tensions? You have reference to the USA and Mexico cartels. It is probably safe enough for you to get off a cruise ship for a couple hours in a place like that. But understand that the cartels, you're not really in danger from the cartel unless you get between them and their business. So being a tourist, you're not going to have a problem. But if there are people in the area who are between the Mexican cartels and their business, the Mexican cartels have made it very clear that they don't have any problem shooting up Cancun, Acapulco, Mazatlan, all the big tourist hotspots. And I think Ensenada is probably okay. I would be a little more careful if you were going to Acapulco, because Acapulco has been really violent lately. So just stick to very tourist areas. Don't go out late at night, especially don't go out alone, et cetera, because not so much that you'll get carjacked or something, but more like you'll get caught in the crossfire and have a problem there. Okay, next question. Oh, where'd it go? Do you see us as being in a Cold War with China and actually more of a threat than the first Cold War with Russia? Yes. Yes and no, actually. It's a little different. Obviously, no two wars are the same, but I do think we're in a Cold War with China. The difference is that we're also one of China's biggest customers. The trade imbalance between the US and China is massive. And it wasn't that way between us and the Soviet Union. There wasn't really a whole lot that we imported from the Soviet Union during that time. So yes, I do think we're in a Cold War. The Chinese have made no bones about the fact that they're at war with the United States, just a war by other means, asymmetric war. And in this day and age, that might be all the war you need, because again, China has managed to kill hundreds of thousands of Americans in the United States through pumping fentanyl into our country. If they had killed hundreds of thousands of people on the battlefield, we would have nuked them by now. And I think that we should hold them accountable for things like that. But again, we have a huge trade issue with them. So it's a little more complicated than that. All right, next. Who's next? Hey, what are your thoughts on nationalism in Southeast Asia and the West? It's a very broad question. Nationalist movements come and go. They are kind of de rigueur right now. They're kind of, it's a fad to have nationalist movements popping up in your country. And that's just kind of a response to the globalist movement. So nationalist movements can be every bit as evil as globalist movements can be. I think it's important to point that out. And I don't know where else to go with that question. So we'll just move on. Next, can we pray for Christians in Nigeria and all other countries? They're being persecuted. Sure, certainly can. And next question says, Free Burma Rangers. Are you asking if I'm talking about the Free Burma Rangers? Yes, I belong to the Free Burma Rangers and have for more than 10 years. This shirt I'm wearing is not a Free Burma Ranger t-shirt. This is a U.S. Army Ranger t-shirt because I was a U.S. Army Ranger as well.
I think they were asking,
Nate,
who are the Free Burma Rangers?
Who are the Free Burma Rangers?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Free Burma Rangers is a humanitarian aid organization made up of volunteers who go into war zones and specifically go into the gap between the point of need and the point of care. And in every war zone, there's a gap there between where people are getting hurt and where people can get help. The reason for that is because it's too dangerous for NGOs and the Red Cross and the UN to go right into the front lines and be, pulling people out off the front lines when they're getting shot or blown up. The Free Burma Rangers exist to fill that gap. And we go into places, not just in Burma. We started in Burma, but lots of places around the world now, and bring medical care specifically, and the gospel, help, hope, and love to people. And we work to get the word out. That's my job. So we do reporting on those conflicts that are sort of underserved by the media. Burma is the poster child for that. Burma is really, really hard to get into and report from, first of all. To do so, we have to go in illegally and from a neighboring country. So it's the Free Burma Rangers have been doing that for more than 20 years. They're now got more than 900 people across Burma, and they have training camp, and they have people. We have teams in Syria, we have teams in Iraq, we have teams in Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. So they do a lot for a lot of good for a lot of people, and do it all across the globe. So I am okay. Next question: does Thailand have a mandatory service military? No, I don't believe so. I don't believe Thailand has a mandatory service requirement for their military. Critical Mass System says, Chuck, is the Jungle Operations Training Center still in operation in Panama? No, it is not, but they are reconstituting it, and they do have a jungle training center that the Panamanians run, and that just recently, this year, United States troops have started attending. But it's not the old Jungle Warfare Training Center. That's JOTC or JWCC. They actually still sell the JWTC t-shirts with the logo on it here in the town that I live in. It's the only place in Panama that I've seen those t-shirts. And it's kind of funny because I'm probably the only person in this town who actually qualified to wear that t-shirt. I mean, I actually went through the course. I went through it twice. So anyway, next question, Chuck, when is your next book being released? This coming year. I don't know, because I'm going through a publisher for this book. And so the timeline is more up to them. I've already turned the manuscript in. And so we're in the final process of typesetting and editing and things like that. But it hopefully will be in the first quarter of this coming year. It's called Red Teams. And I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to like it a lot. Okay, can you talk about Syria and how the Druze and other minorities there, what? How are they surviving? The Druze are holding their own. Israel is helping them. The Israelis are holding territory inside Syria. I've been hearing from my friends that are in Syria. I talked to them actually yesterday and today. And, there's still a lot of hardship and a lot of difficulty between the Kurdish controlled part of Syria and the rest of Syria that's controlled by Ahmed al-Sharaa. So, I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but we need to do a whole podcast on that because the Turks just invaded Syria again with troops from 3 directions. And most of that is aimed at the Kurds. So it's getting more and more difficult for the Kurds every day. All right, the next question. Are Chuck's books available as Kindle books? Yes, they are. Virtually all of them are available on Amazon. Next question. How much does it cost monthly to live in Panama compared to the United States? There are people that live on Social Security down here. The question is more, are you willing to live on the local economy, or do you want to live on an American standard? What I mean is, if you're living on the local economy, the local people don't use air conditioning. The local people eat rice and beans several times a week. They don't, they're buying food locally. They're not getting American brands. They're not getting American style food. Panamanian style food, in my opinion, is pretty bland and a lot of fried stuff. But if you're willing to live, I can go to a Panamanian restaurant right next door to my house and eat breakfast for under $3. But if I go to the more American style, Western style restaurant that's just down the road from that, my plate might be $25, $15 to $25, something like that. And it's a nice restaurant, but you see that there's a difference, and the difference comes in your expectations. So yes, there are people that you can live here more cheaply than you can in America's most expensive places, and less cheaply than you can in America's cheapest places, perhaps. I think it's healthier living for a lot of reasons down here, not the least of which is the year-round growing season, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. I can buy a 15-pound bag of vegetables, assorted vegetables, for like $5 here. And I mean, so Yeah, there are things that are cheaper. For me, the thing that makes living here cheaper is the taxes, because I don't have to pay as much in federal tax, and the savings in federal I still pay federal taxes. I just don't pay as much. And that's completely legal because my bona fide abode is outside the United States. And so the tax savings makes everything else irrelevant. It's very, very cheap for me because of that. Okay, next question. I'm just curious, but can Christians support a capitalistic healthcare system? How can Christians support a capitalistic healthcare system? What about those who are poor or get born with severe disabilities? Should not Christians care for those people? Of course, Christians should care for those people. We just shouldn't nationalize our care. You realize that nationalized anything is not charity, whether it's welfare, whether it's anything. That's not charity. We as Christians are called to charitable giving. For example, let's say that, well, first of all, we have a capitalistic healthcare in the United States, but one of the reasons our healthcare is more expensive is because poor people can go to the emergency room and get treated and not pay. We have to treat them. We cannot turn them away. Okay. So poor people actually can get at least some level of care and not pay. And there are places that my sister works in an ER that's just overrun with homeless people coming in there for everything, mostly just to keep warm. Okay. So it's not like the United States just goes, oh, you can't pay? We're not going to let you in the door. It doesn't quite work like that. And there are NGOs and charities that help with, like the Ronald McDonald Foundation, that help poor people get the care they need, chronically ill people, people with disabilities get the care they need. And that's just it. If Europeans believed, if European Christians believed that much that Christians ought to help those people, then they'd be doing it themselves and not expecting the government to do it with your tax dollars, because it's spectacularly inefficient for the government to take money from you in coercion by taxes and then give it to somebody else they think needs it more than you do. That's a very, very inefficient way to do it. In the United States, there's a 40% overhead, meaning of every dollar that we take in taxes, only 60 cents makes it back out the door to any kind of program, just because of the friction involved. And it's that way in Europe too. And again, so as a Christian, I think it's my responsibility to help people. And that's why we just raised $30,000 for a poor family whose daughter has cystic fibrosis and needed care here in Panama. We just did that. We do that all the time. We do that every month. I mean, thousands of dollars a month, maybe not tens of thousands, but close to $10,000 a month that this organization, the Hot Zone, is donating to various needy people around the world. That's how charity is supposed to be done. And so don't try to, guilt American Christians into voting for capitalistic healthcare system. Capitalistic healthcare system is the best way to have a healthcare system. It's the most judicious way to have a healthcare system, in my opinion. All right, next. All right, we have another question. I think is that it? Okay, that's it. All right, well, we're well over an hour, so thank you very much for watching the Hot Zone today. I appreciate all of you, and especially those of you who are really putting your money on where your mouth is and donating to these fundraisers we're doing, and supporting us over at chuckholton.com, sending money like this here through YouTube. All of that is great. We really appreciate all of you guys. And thank you very much for watching. God bless you. We'll see you next time.